This week, spluttering safely to a stop. Out of the house and into the game box. And what do gaming and protests have in common? Hey, welcome to Click. Hope you're doing okay. It may be getting cold up here in the Northern Hemisphere, but this is the year when we're all being encouraged to spend as much time as possible outside, ventilation and all. And one person who spends a lot of time outside is Laura Lewington.
Yes, I've been running outside more than ever. I think it just gives you a sense of freedom and at the moment some sort of sense of normality. Although I've been getting very annoyed. This week people have not been indicating properly. The cars are just turning around the corner. But I do understand that runners aren't actually that popular at the moment.
Don't run on the road. Now, listen, talking of which, a lot more people have been doing this as well lately. In the last year or so, I've e-scooted around bits of London, Copenhagen, Wellington and Auckland. Seems like a lifetime ago now.
It certainly does. They're legal in many countries, but in the UK you could only ride them on private land. Until July this year, that was, where a trial to see how rental e-scooters could work in UK cities commenced.
There are some concerns though, one being the safety of the riders and other people, and another being the fact that not every e-scooter on the road is allowed to be there. In a follow-up to last year's report, Omar Metab has been taking a look at what's being done to tackle these issues.
Well, hey, I'm riding an e-scooter around on a road. Oh. Right, that might not seem like a big deal, but it is. And the reason is because up until recently, you couldn't ride e-scooters on public roads in the UK. Okay, let's rewind to last year, when I first looked at these light e-vehicles. Even then, e-scooters were taking over cities around the world. Their growth was supercharged by a cheap and easy rental system. Find one, download an app, scan a code, and ride away, paying by the minute. But whilst they've excited consumers, they've proven a major headache for regulators. And the UK's position was to put the brakes on their rollout, both for rental companies and private ownership. It hasn't stopped people buying and riding them on the road. Now, let's fast forward to May 2020, when the UK's Transport Minister Grant Shapps announced a year's trial of rental e-scooters, designed to give people an alternative to public transport during the pandemic. This is a big deal, because the UK is finally joining the likes of France, Germany, most states in the US, Australia, and many others in allowing e-scooters on public roads. We went to Milton Keynes to visit e-scooter rental company Lime and their warehouse and ride one of their vehicles. They're the first operator allowed to rent them in a town in the UK. Now, this was filmed a couple of months ago, and since then, places in the UK such as Nottingham, Birmingham, Manchester have started running these trials, and London as well is close to having most boroughs running these services in the near future. But there are some caveats. You must ride your rental e-scooter on the road, not on pavements, just roads. And other light e-vehicles such as hoverboards or e-skateboards, they're still illegal. You can't ride them out in public. And when it comes to your e-scooter, it must be a rental. It can't be privately owned. If it is, because it's classed as a motor vehicle, you need things like tax, MOT, insurance, things you can't readily get for e-scooters at the moment. But not everyone is getting that message. Like other areas around the city, where I live in East London hasn't yet allowed the rental of e-scooters. But that's not stopping people from riding their personal ones around. This one even zipped past as we were filming a couple of times. So I asked a couple of riders if they knew. Did you know that these are illegal?
Yeah.
You know they're illegal?
Yeah.
But you still ride it around anyway?
No, but they say if you want to use it, you can use it, it's up to you, but you can use this one only on the park.
Only on the park. Okay, but you used it on the road as well, so you're just hoping that they don't catch you.
Yeah, sometimes I can use it. Even when I go to a big lane, there is a lot of people there. Police as well, they don't complain about that.
Now, as you heard, someone thought that it's still okay to ride one despite knowing it's illegal just because they saw others do so too. Is that a good enough reason?
No, that's a pathetic argument, isn't it? To say, I know it's illegal, but I see other people doing it, therefore I'm going to do it, is a pathetic argument that just, passes the buck to other people. If you're riding this, you're committing the offences, you're putting yourself at risk, and you're putting other people at risk.
But now, companies are coming up with innovative solutions to keep riders safe. E-scooter rental company TIA includes a collapsible helmet as standard. So, all you do is you take it out, build the thing, if I can. But that is not the only innovation that they've come up with. They've also got indicators on the handlebars, letting pedestrians as well as cars know when you're turning. There's even a wireless charging slot for your phone. And then there's Link e-scooters. They have some pretty unique features. Link scooters can check their GPS location against maps stored directly on the vehicle and immediately enforce geofences around no-go zones, such as pavements or restricted land. And so this bypasses any phone-to-cloud lag that you would normally have. So what should happen, thanks to the geofencing here, is that as soon as I get on the pavement, it starts cutting out. You get a beeping, there we go. And it's limiting my speed, like a lot. It's not going. Now, it did take a second or two to power off, but that's because I don't want to suddenly stop and launch over the handlebars. But that's not the only thing. The scooter is also able to self-diagnose. So what it's doing is it's constantly asking itself, am I working all right? Are my components all working absolutely fine? Are any of them about to fail? So in theory, what should happen when I put this scooter on its side, it comes up as a notification on that interface there. And it does. Hasn't stopped. But its features didn't always work perfectly. This is not working again. It's cut out again. Now, to be fair, the e-scooter needs to ride in the geofenced area quite a few times to increase its accuracy. And it did improve over time. And it's cut out. I can't ride it anymore. And there's another company that allows automatic braking of their e-scooters. Voy has integrated an AI computer vision system. Developed by Luna, an array of cameras and sensors allows scooters to detect hazards in its path, even if the rider doesn't see them. And by counting pedestrians, the system can even detect where the scooter is being ridden. So it looks like companies are quickly innovating to try and combat any objections. And with the UK's Transport Committee of MPs pushing for legislation, it doesn't seem like a question of if they will be legalised, but when. So what does the UK have to look forward to? Let's hear from a city where they've been legal and hugely popular for a while.
My suggestion would be do as much community-led engagement and safety sort of launches around how to safely ride a scooter, how to ethically ride a scooter.
It's nice to be able to convey to somebody how many miles have been ridden, how many trips have been taken, to really demonstrate to people how important this is and how it's offsetting trips from their commute.
I don't see an end to it anytime soon. The popularity of it is too great for us not to lean into it and find a way to make it safer over time.
So whether you like it or not, it looks like e-scooters are probably going to become an integral part of future urban transport. And there are loads of benefits for riders in the cities, but questions about infrastructure and about regulations still need to be answered. And so the work needs to be done now to make them as well integrated and as safe as possible.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that Uber sold off its self-driving car division and its flying taxi arm, Elevate. We've barely got 5G, but now Nokia has been named leader of Europe's project to develop 6G. And Japan is turning to AI matchmaking to boost its record low birth rate, investing 2 billion yen. That's around $19 million. In other AI news, Nvidia has found a way to train models with 10 to 20 times fewer images than usual. The advanced neural network approach has been used to generate artwork in the style of famous painters. It also created images of cancer tissue, starting with under 1,500 images. A robot kitchen could now make you dinner and then wash up, as long as you have nearly £250,000 spare. This chef's algorithms are trained on human movements to allow it to retrieve ingredients, work at the hob, pour, mix, and of course, plate up. And finally, MIT has created a shape-shifting basketball hoop that makes shots harder the better you get. This tightens and raises upward when players get consistent baskets thanks to sensors that track the ball's movements. Its makers say it could help players who can't afford coaches. Now that's a slam dunk for science.
For the first time in months, I'm making a video outside of my house, so I've gone straight into a darkened room to play games in front of a computer screen. Back in 2016, I went to a tech show in Paris where I tried out a virtual reality gaming booth that worked with projectors instead of a headset, and 4 years later, this might just be an idea whose time has come. This is the electric game box.
It's sort of like a cross between an escape room and virtual reality, but instead of a headset, I just need to wear a visor with this tree of tracking dots on, and those let the cameras and the computer know where in the room I am.
There are 8 rooms at this venue with 4 projectors in each, providing 360 degrees of visuals. The walls are touch sensitive and of course there are motion tracking cameras.
In this game I'm being tested by aliens to see how intelligent I am, and I've got to control this character and collect as many coins as I can, moving him around with my body. Oh, no, this way.
The business was co-founded by Will Dean, who's also behind the Tough Mudder endurance events. This year's have had to be postponed due to the pandemic, but Electric Gamebox has been able to reopen 2 of its venues. At the moment, you can only play with your household or bubble, but groups are separated from one another and the equipment is all easily cleaned after use. The question is, after months of Zoom quizzes and video calls, will people want this type of screen time?
Well, we believe that what we're doing here is making screen time social again. I went and did an immersive VR experience. I went with a friend of mine, and when we finished, I realised I really hadn't been with my friend at all. The trouble with VR is it's almost too immersive. Here, the fundamental ethos and mission of the business is bringing people together through the value of shared play.
Some people have compared this to an escape room. Obviously, in an escape room, there's a lot more physical props. Won't people find that more immersive?
Well, an escape room is a static adventure. It's once and done. Here, in some ways, we're a bit more like a movie theatre or a cinema. You can come back and play different content each time. And as such, we believe we have far more potential because people keep coming back time and time again. There's also the potential to beat your old score, and we see a lot of people coming back to do that.
As well as providing a pandemic-proof activity for families to do, venues like this could help breathe new life into the high street, which has seen big brands fall into administration or even close this year. While shops are struggling, there is a growing appetite for experiences. Electric Gamebox is about to open its first venue in the United States, and its Manchester venue will reopen once restrictions there are relaxed.
Now, Hong Kong has seen a year of pro-democracy demonstrations after China passed a controversial national security law which reduced Hong Kong's autonomy and made it easier to punish demonstrators. Just this week, 3 prominent activists were sentenced to jail for their involvement in protests last year.
In fact, one of the activists, Joshua Wong, featured on Click talking about how internet freedoms were being threatened by the newly imposed law. Danny Vincent has been keeping us posted with the protests from inside Hong Kong.
And this week, he's been meeting some protesters who've been explaining that the strategies that they use actually come from multiplayer online games.
In a gaming room somewhere in Hong Kong, a team of young protesters dressed in black bloc have agreed to meet. They are what is known as frontliners. Last year, they were active in the city's anti-government protest movement. They took to the streets in their thousands. In Hong Kong, activism is unconventional, protests fast-moving and leaderless. To some, the tactics, the collaboration, resemble multiplayer online gaming.
The Hong Kong protest evolution was just so quick. It was quicker than any protest movement you could have seen before. We learned a lot from the games, and also from real life in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong has one of the most innovative protest movements in the world, but many of the young people on the front line say that some of their strategies and ideas, they come from computer games.
This game is called League of Legends, and it's liked by lots of the younger generation. I personally think, since it has a map and objectives, it's like during a protest.
In Hong Kong, more than 1/3 of high school students play 3 hours of online games a day. 10% of primary school students are said to suffer from gaming addiction. For some, gaming is a way of life. But real-world divisions have also played out in the virtual world. Last year, Hong Kong gamers dressed as protesters in Grand Theft Auto 5 and started a mass violent campaign. They were met with mainland Chinese players dressed as riot police. Bella is a former protester. She agreed to speak to us under the conditions of anonymity.
There are some correlations between playing games and the actual protests. For example, you can learn a lot of strategies from playing. During the protests, you are like the protagonists inside the games, fighting against rivals, trying to run to escape. It's quite the same.
Protesters, she says, learn from their mistakes, like in games, and adapt.
Some scenarios in the games, like standing off against rivals, are similar to protesters standing off against the police. But you also learn from failed missions and look at what worked and apply it to the next protest.
Since the introduction of a new national security law, Hong Kong has seen fewer organised mass demonstrations. There have been more than 10,000 protest-related arrests since last year. More than 1,000 are under 18.
What is the difference between reality and the virtual world? Well, in reality, when you fail, you can't restart and complete again. You might get injured in a protest, or put in jail, or even killed. The consequences in real life are more serious. You would need to face the consequences as a team, not just on your own. It's not like in a game, where you can replay after you fail. You can try unlimited times. In reality, you just have one chance.
That was Jeff talking to Danny Vincent in Hong Kong. Right, before our next story, Lara, I'd like you to have a guess at what these 3 things have in common. You ready?
I'm ready, far away.
Okay, cyberspace, flying cars, and dreaming sheep.
Well, it sounds like research for this show, but I'm guessing it's not going to be, so enlighten me.
No, they are all mainstays of or inspirations for the sci-fi genre known as cyberpunk. Love a bit of cyberpunk, yes. Now, one of the biggest video games of this year is Cyberpunk 2077. And Mark Chislak has been chatting to the brains behind the game. So let's find out if any of those things turn up in his film.
A giant megalopolis to explore. Cybernetic enhancements. Futuristic hacking skills. And to top it all, Keanu Reeves as a rock star who lives inside your head.
Maybe we'll fit together after all.
Welcome to one of the most anticipated video games of the year, Cyberpunk 2077.
Cyberpunk for me as a sci-fi genre has always had something of an 80s vibe about it. Instead of adventures taking place in outer space, Cyberpunk is concerned with urban sprawls and cyberspace, dark futures blighted by environmental collapse and technology run rampant. Is any of this starting to sound familiar?
Well, let's put it this way, the cars don't fly. That's about it. Okay, let's see. We've got a plague. We've had some nuclear accidents. We've had short-term wars. We've had a lot of really amazing hacking exploits going on. Governments fold before corporations. We had corporations rise, fall, gut countries, and then move on. I personally know somebody who hires mercenaries for corporations in foreign countries. You know, all of this stuff, it's all there. So, if you're worried about living in a cyberpunk future, I suggest you look at the news.
The Cyberpunk game has its roots in pen and paper rather than pixels. Created in 1988 by Mike Pondsmith, it started life as a tabletop role-playing game. Pondsmith had a background in video games and managed to filter the films and books of the time into a successful role-playing franchise. And in doing so, he managed to predict much of the world we live in today.
It's just amazing what's out there. The problem becomes we don't know how to vet it. We don't know how to tell what's going to be true. For example, I wrote a variation of Cyberpunk called Cyberpunk V3, where its primarily message is about what happens when you have an information collapse and people are able to pick their own information to build their realities. So we have what's called culture conf, where people are fighting over my reality is better than your reality, and here's what really happened back in 1962 or something. But we're there. We're looking at it right now. Worldwide, people are rewriting realities, and there's nothing out there to really balance it out. And so people are going to have to become a lot smarter.
Pondsmith's tabletop fiction has been digitally realised by Polish developers CD Projekt Red, the team behind the hugely successful Witcher video game series.
CD Projekt Red are responsible for, of all the things in the past 10 years, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is one of the most exciting, sprawling, huge RPGs that we've seen, and people absolutely love it.
When the pandemic hit, the developers carried on, completing their work from home. The game has been plagued by reports of crunch in its later stages though, with developers working a 6-day week in an effort to get the title completed on time for release. And even though work continued on the game, its release has been delayed several times. These delays have sparked anger on social media, in extreme cases led to threats being directed at the development team.
We try not to take in too much of the negative comments when they arrive. And of course, there are also situations which never can be really accepted, like some kind of threats and situations like those, which also happened, unfortunately.
So, has all of that effort on the part of the developers been worth it? Well, on first impressions, Night City certainly is a good-looking mashup of every cyberpunk visual trope. Rain, neon, and intricately detailed urban squalor, they're all here. Like the setting, missions draw on the history of the cyberpunk genre. Tech heists abound. Combat can be approached different ways via stealth and using technology, or the player can choose a more direct, let the boomstick do the talking approach, or a combination of all of these things. Cybernetic upgrades enhance the player's body, improving your chance of survival in Night City. Something else which is less fun are the bugs, which isn't really surprising considering the size and detail of the world and the effect of the pandemic on developers working from home. Patches will no doubt follow, but more worrying are reports of flashing lights at particular sections of the game, inducing an epileptic seizure in one reviewer. The game's developers have responded by saying they'll add an additional splash screen warning about potential triggers. And they've created an alternative visual effect replacing the one which has caused this problem, and will change it via an update. So far, Cyberpunk 2077 is an ambitious and good-looking example of an open-world FPS, but it's not without its problems.
That was Mark in full cyberpunk mode, and that is it for this week.
As ever, you can find the team on social media throughout the week on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at BBC Click.
Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.
Bye-bye.